Hey guys, before I do more videos in my new and improved live cam format, I wanted to do this. This might be the last time I do this sort of video, because honestly, in 2018, I was so disappointed with like the quality. Not even disappointed, just it was more of a dull acceptance that we accept mediocre movies, and I will talk more about this later when I talk about the Oscars, because that's something I never really talk about when it comes to film, because I think they're not only are they irrelevant, they're kind of a degradation of the art form in a way. But I just saw this movie, this Liam Neeson movie called Cold Pursuit. I think it's a brilliant movie. I think it's in the vein of Tarantino, but not overly autistic in that way. I think it's got a lot of dark humor. It's a dark comedy. That's what it is, about a snowplow man, and you should definitely check it out. And I said, God damn! After I watched it, I'm like, that was better than 99% of the movies I saw last year. Like, straight out the gate. Maybe 95, maybe not 99, but you get my drift. There was a lot of shit. I think most movies that people think are great are total shit. But these might be the exceptions. I'm going to give you my list real quick. The run, not real quick, but as long as it fucking takes, you will sit here and absorb my wisdom like a sponge. Sorry, I can get creepy sometimes. These are the best movies of 2018. At number 10, we have Mission Impossible Fallout. I reviewed this on my channel already. You can go check that out. I will link that in the description. Some of these I've already reviewed. Not all of them, but this is one of them. There's no blood in this movie, which is a minus. The twists are as surprising as a puppy shitting on your brand new carpet. That's another minus. The villain sucks. But you know what? There are just enough body slams through walls and karate kicks with sinks to forgive that. Motorcycles, helicopters, bombs, all of your inner terrorist's favorite things occur in this movie, only without the manifesto. And the movie never stops to catch its breath. Tom Cruise is still, I don't know what he's on, I don't know what drugs he's on and shit, but he's just got it down to a science at this point, a Scientology rather, huh? But this movie gives the people what they want. I mean, I found it impossible not to enjoy this on just a pure action movie level. It's got the special effects. It's got all the stunts. The motorcycle chase is one of the best I've seen since probably The Dark Knight. Yeah, it sounds like a Tom Clancy audiobook, but nobody cares. Number 9, The Sisters Brothers. This is one of those revisionist westerns. The Western cannot undergo enough revision, and it's been put on life support for a good reason. We still want the frontier back, even in the knowledge that we'll never see it again. That was more poetic than it needed to be. How did we rate Mother Earth? We built pipelines. But Westerns take us back to a time where you could kill your brother for a missing shoelace, steal his clothes, his woman and children, his cattle, his identity, walk into a whole different town dressed as him, and nobody would say shit until some other cowboy found you. That's fucking amazing. This movie stars Joaquin Phoenix, John C. Reilly, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Riz Ahmed. They play four guys who were scumbags, because savages basically, like so many cowboys. And this takes place during the gold rush, so they're out for gold. And I never understood why the leprechaun or the black man was always gets stereotyped as the gold diggers. Cowboys, I think, were the ultimate gold diggers. They're ultimate savages. As far as this movie goes, it's really a character study. It's kind of a comedy, it's kind of a drama, but mainly what I liked about it is that you can never really tell where the story is going. This is a movie that constantly diverted my expectations without going way too far out of whack, like, say, a Martin McDonagh film, like Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I thought that was a piece of shit, unlike a lot of people. But I think this, because that movie just didn't make sense to me, but what happens in this story makes a lot of sense. And number 8, You Were Never Really Here, again starring Joaquin Phoenix. I'm not one to lose their shit whenever an actor transforms into a role. Christian Bale packs on the pounds again to play Dick Cheney. I mean, nowadays it seems less like a commitment and more of a fetish for him. I'm gonna take some horse tranquilizers to prepare for my role as a potato. Where's my Oscar? Hey, and I'm not even knocking Vice. That was fine. It was an okay movie. I'll talk about it a bit later in my Oscars video. But You Were Never Really Here is a fascinating movie. Joaquin Phoenix plays what can only be described as an emo 13-year-old in a lumberjack's body. And fuck me, it works. I think he's just one of the best actors working today. Almost nobody's better at portraying these psychotic, broken men. This dude's a killing machine in this movie. And the movie's been described as Taxi Driver with maybe a little more visual flair. It's definitely a grimy film. The character doesn't really have a lot of motive. And if not for the consummate filmmaking, this would leave me empty and cold as an Amsterdam hooker. Surely, nihilism of this level should be seen as navel-gazing bullshit. So I can kind of see the criticisms. It's a slow burn, but it's only 90 minutes, so I think that evens out. The word meditation immediately springs to every critic's salty tongue, and I hate that word, but I would say it's an apt word to describe this movie. Lynn Ramsey, who directed it, wisely keeps the exposition low, and I think it's almost a hallucination. This movie could easily represent something that it doesn't actually show. There's going to be conspiracy theories on it, perhaps. I think there already are. It's one of those where you don't really understand the meaning up front. And that's a huge risk. But I think in this movie it pays off. A lot of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's just a bunch of artsy bullshit. But I think in this movie it works. A lot of people disagree with me though. I like that Joaquin uses a hammer as a weapon. Every killer's got to have his own style. And I like the brutal violence. I'm not going to lie. Common theme in my choice of great movies is a lot of violence. And this movie really shows it in unconventional ways. Like the hallway cams, I thought that was very clever. So I liked a lot about this movie, even though I can't remember most of it because I was fucking blazed when I watched it. Alright, number 7, Wild Wild Country. This one is on Netflix. A lot of these are. This one is a documentary, and it's not about a serial killer. No. Fuck Ted Bundy. You know, anybody could do what he did. He's a fucking amateur, alright? You know what's more interesting than a serial killer? Someone who you think could be a serial killer if you just push them a little further to the edge. Ma Anand Sheila is one of those people. And the movie focuses on mainly her story, but also the story of the community that she intrudes upon in Oregon. She's this religious zealot who helped build a community for acid casualties. This really happened, according to the designs of her sugar daddy, Osho, aka the Baj One. From the very start of the film, we see the tightly knit conservative folk of Wasco County, Oregon, talk about how their town is taken over by this freaky sex cult in the 1980s, and bit by bit, you see them overwhelm the area with religious and sex tourism from hippie burnouts. We're also introduced to the sex-crazed Rajneesh cult and just how popular that came to be in the late 60s India. But their ambitions don't stop there. They were out for blood. Sheila's just creepy as fuck. The movie does a fair job of hearing out both sides of the conflict, and it's pretty sick, and it really happens, so check this one out. Number 6, The Favorite. Yorgos Lanthimos is another one of these auteurs with his jizz coating every frame so that he's set apart from anyone else. But obviously there are big strains of Kubrick in this, and certainly no problem with that. Barry Lyndon was one of my favorite movies of all time, and this definitely echoes that. Compared to his other movies that I've seen, I would say this isn't as good as Killing of a Sacred Deer, which was on my last year's list, but it was better than Lobster. My biggest beef with all three of these films is that Lanthimos doesn't really know how to end them. His resolutions are unsatisfying. The Favorite is another one of these films that it feels like it's going to build to so much more than it does. But otherwise, it's terrific. It's a loose depiction of Queen Anne, who ruled England from 1702 to 1707. And we follow Emma Stone. She comes out of the mud as a peasant and slowly works her way up in the ranks as the Queen's confidant. And this is easily my favorite performance of hers. I think it's because of the screenplay. That's mainly the reason why any actor is good, in my opinion. But everyone's excellent. The script is witty and bawdy, and it's designed to make your grandma scream fire in a crowded theater. But to young people, the subject matter should not surprise you without giving anything away. It's just an extremely well-made film. There's your typical double intrigue and competition. In some ways, this is a meshing of my two previous favorite films of 2016 and 2017, respectively, The Handmaiden and Phantom Thread. Imagine those two put together and you pretty much get The Favorite. Now, in terms of what it's about, all I can say is I think it's about status and the ruthless fixation on it in any power structure. This story could just as easily take place in corporate America in lieu of Victorian England. In some ways, it's almost a criticism of matriarchies when it shows the Queen's evident lack of interest in foreign affairs. There's just scenes where it's like, yeah, there's a war going on, and the Queen's like, fuck you, and just stuffs her face with cake. And I thought that was funny. If you like movies about ambitious people getting from point A to point B through sheer cunning and trickery, this movie's right up your alley. Number 5, Upgrade. This one is the best action movie of the year, by far, and the best sci-fi. Again, this movie skates by, I think, on self-awareness, much like Mission Impossible did, but it's grittier, bloodier, funnier, everything that's sorely lacking in movies now. You know, entertainment, no message. I think it's only a matter of time before these helicopter parents start putting chips in their kids' craniums, and they already track their phones. Suppose they lose the phone. If your 16-year-old daughter was doing lines of coke off dicks, wouldn't you want to know about it, you sick fucks? You know, I've always felt that was the loss of our humanity. That's where it starts, is our craving for safety. And this has been consistent in our national attitude. And again, if the action scenes somehow aren't enough to satisfy you, there might be some social commentary I'm not sure I picked up on. It's probably not that underrated at this point, but this is a movie that every one of you should check out if you see it pop up. I would recommend this to most everyone. Now, at number 4, we have a movie that I wouldn't recommend to just anyone. This is Orson Welles' The Other Side of the Wind, and this is, again, on Netflix. I keep saying their name. Maybe one day they'll pay me. Don't get your hopes up. This is where I start to lose most of my peers in my discussion about film. When it comes to the old giants, like Orson Welles, who was just a giant of cinema, you have to have a really high IQ to understand. Look, if you don't have an IQ, it's fine. So the story goes that Orson Welles wasn't finished splooging out his last gap of montage, and he died before it ever saw the light of day. And now Netflix has its greasy claws on his corpse, and I'm glad they do, because I love this movie. I fucking loved it. It's not because I have a hard-on for anything with Orson Welles' name on it. This is a movie that breaks all the rules of conventional filmmaking, classical and modern. Most movies are exactly the same, you know, and this is a movie that I guarantee you've never seen before. It's one of the most original and adventurous attempts at a film I've ever seen, and the key word here is attempt. A lot of people aren't going to like this movie because it offers no easy explanation for anything. It's a giant meta joke. being meta works all of the time, but I think in these times it's more relevant because it's so meta, and that left a big impression on me. The dialogue is, again, very witty and literate. This is how I imagined, maybe Gertrude Stein's authors in her Paris salon might have talked about literature. These are insufferable people. And every one of them sounds like it's Orson Welles talking. Sounds like he's speaking through every one of these characters. So, aside from the main character, Jake Hannaford, who's played by John Huston, there's really not a lot of character here. Most of the movie takes place at a dinner party where the old man celebrates his last film. He, too, is a filmmaker, and there's a movie within a movie, and this movie's worth a watch if you can already appreciate Orson Welles. But I wouldn't recommend this to everyone if you're just all about entertainment. And I know it sounds like I'm only scratching the surface in describing this movie, and I am, because you have to understand that, I think this movie's all surface. It's all surface level. It's either dense beyond belief or it's all surface level. It's hard to describe. I can't really recommend it based on anything other than it's Orson Welles, and it's genius. Really one of the few genius directors besides Kubrick. Number 3, Roma. I already reviewed this movie. This is a film that has all the makings of a giant fuck you to Trump. But make no mistake, this is not a political movie. This is a people's movie. It takes some adjusting before seeing what it's about, because the style is so unique, but it's one of those few movies where the emotion is its strength. And that's really hard to pull off for me. I watched this at 5 a.m. when I couldn't get to sleep, so maybe I was ready to cry a little, but oh well, it's great. What are you gonna do? Number 2, Halloween. I hate reboots. They're the worst thing. There's nothing worse. Except for bad comedy, which I talked about in my worst movies of 2018. Go check that out. But I don't think I've ever seen a reboot movie that got it right. I got no love for nostalgia at all. But this one has brutal murder, so you know it's going to be on here. In an age of watered down, bloodless, ballless, PG-13 jump scare garbage, I think we need slasher films to make a comeback more than ever. They weren't even all that great to begin with, but I think they're way better than this pussy shit today. Truth or Dare, fucking Hereditary, give me a break. What a joke. Where's the plot? Where's the plot? But, go watch my review on Hereditary if your head exploded and my shitting on it. Halloween, on the other hand, is a great horror movie. Not quite as great as the original, but it gets there. It gets the job done. It hits all the right notes. When Michael Myers body slams a hot chick through a bathroom stall or throws her over a staircase, you can feel the bones crush. The violence is brutal. There's also plenty of crowd-pleasing moments. There's a funny black kid and a hot babysitter. They're a great comic duo, kind of like Abbott and Costello or Trump and Kanye. And there are just the right amount of callbacks to the original Halloween without overdosing on nostalgia. There are a few plot holes. There are a few stupid moments, and I mean stupid, but they're easy to overlook because this is a horror movie, and it's a really good one. It's one of the best sequels that I can remember in recent memory. And I'm curious to see if anybody thought any different, because I seem to like it more than the average person. But, that's what you get. And at number 1, my favorite movie of 2018. I had to think about this one before I decided, but ultimately I decided on The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And, yep, you guessed it. It's on Netflix. And it's by the Coen brothers, Fargo, No Country for Old Men. You should be familiar with their work if you know anything about film. The Coen brothers made this, and look, the Coen brothers movies have been completely hit or miss for me. There are some that a lot of people say are great that I just hated, and there are some that people said were great that or people said were bad, but I liked. And again, it's really hit and miss for me. No Country for Old Men is one of the greatest films of all time, but I would say that The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is in the top half of their work easily, easily. And why is that? Well, first of all, there is no one story here. They do something very risky. They have 6 stories instead of one. So there's not that much time to get your point across. Each of them is about 30 minutes, adding to about a 2-hour, 2.5-hour movie, something like that. And yet, everything in this movie is spring tight. From the set design to the costumes to the performances, the setting is about as authentic as you can get for a Western. This movie is perfectly detailed. The vignettes, they're absurd, they're poignant, they're funny, they're brutal. It finds this great balance between comedy and drama. It really is an essential in that regard. And even though the stories all have different characters with zero overlap, you never see, they don't intersect like in Tarantino movies. And yet, it's impressive because in spite of that, you still feel as if you're reading a great novel while you're watching this movie. The tone is so unique that you get the impression that somehow it's all connected, and that each of these chapters are part of something greater. And I think when Quentin Tarantino does it, it can get tiresome. I was never a huge fan of the chapter book style. I think it works sometimes, but this is an example where it really, really works. This is a great movie, and you should definitely check it out. All right, this has gone on long enough. Please subscribe to the channel. You're going to love what I have coming up next. Go like the Facebook page. It's included in the description. Let's keep on raging for the win.